Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of June 1st, 2025. A large number of events took place today, so let's get started. We'll begin with the northeastern part of Ukraine, as well as the Bryansk and Kursk regions of the Russian Federation. Last night, terrorist attacks occurred in the Bryansk and Kursk regions. At least, that's how these attacks were classified by the relevant Russian authorities. As a result of these terrorist actions, railway bridges and regular road bridges were blown up and subsequently collapsed onto the railway tracks. Now let's go step by step and plot these railways on the map. This will help us understand what's going on. Here is the first railway that was effectively blocked today due to the terrorist attack. It runs from the Republic of Belarus towards the city of Bryansk. Specifically, a bridge was blown up near the settlement of Lopush and collapsed onto a train. At this point, logistics were effectively blocked. The next railway runs south from Bryansk, first toward the town of Dmitriev, where another railway bridge was blown up. From Dmitriev, the railway continues to the town of Lvov, and from there it runs to Kursk. If we look at the map, both bridges, and thus both rail lines, were destroyed just northeast of Ukraine. Regarding the third explosion, which occurred along the Unecha-Jetcha line, there is also a railway there. In this case, the railway runs from Unecha toward the Ukrainian border to a settlement called Vitemlia. As a result of these terrorist attacks, 3 major logistical arteries were destroyed, routes that were used, or possibly still used, by the Sever Or North military group for offensive operations in the northern part of Sumy Oblast. We can see that the targets were chosen deliberately. Most importantly, the attacks were not aimed simply at damaging the railway tracks. The goal was to cause maximum disruption. To achieve that, the railroads not only had to be blown up, but also blocked by derailed train cars. That was the clear objective of the perpetrators behind these terrorist acts. At the moment, it's difficult to say how much this will impact the combat readiness of the Russian forces currently advancing toward the city of Sumy. However, it's highly likely that the pace of the offensive could slow down in the near future, at least until the Russian side manages to restore supply lines, possibly via alternative routes. The main objective of this terrorist attack was to destroy and completely paralyze logistics for the Sever group, which is actively advancing into Sumy Oblast with the goal of establishing a security zone. Now I'd like to draw your attention to another very important point. This could potentially help us better understand the entire situation. Not necessarily from a different perspective, but it will add some important details that will give us a clearer picture of what happened. To understand what happened with these bridges, why they were targeted, and why this happened now, we need to increase the number of updates starting from May 21, 2025. As you may know, or at least be aware, today the Ukrainian side, without hiding their involvement, carried out drone strikes on strategic aviation airfields. At the time this video was being prepared, strikes were being carried out in the Murmansk region, as well as near the town of Irkutsk, which is in the Russian Far East. Let's start with Murmansk. Today, the Ukrainian side published these surveillance footage images. Here we can see a Ukrainian drone flying over, and visible are destroyed or damaged pieces of Russian strategic aviation equipment at an airfield near the settlement of Leningorsk. As you can see, a significant number of aircraft were destroyed or disabled. Here is more footage. The drone appears to be searching for another target. As it approaches another strategic aircraft, an explosion occurs. Here is another angle of the incident. A bit later, Ukrainian sources released what could be considered an official statement. President Zelensky himself commented on the situation. In addition to discussing the drone strikes, Zelensky also announced that he is ready and willing to participate in negotiations that are scheduled to take place tomorrow, June 2nd, in Istanbul. According to Zelensky, the Ukrainian delegation has already departed for the talks. Later, the SBU, Security Service of Ukraine, also commented on the operation. According to the SBU, the planning for this operation took at least a year and a half. These photos were also published, showing how the drones were built and how they managed to reach deep into Russian territory. The plan and core idea of the operation involved the creation of numerous containers filled with dozens of drones. These containers were loaded onto ordinary trucks, which then drove up to Russian military bases. The containers were activated near the bases and FPV drone operators, apparently located nearby in the same regions, took control and carried out strikes on Russian strategic airbases. The second strike took place in the Russian Far East, and footage from that region was released. Again, we see a large number of explosions, smoke, and the destruction of strategic aviation aircraft hangars and warehouses. This video also captures the moment of the attack, where we can observe containers and a truck, from which drones are being launched and flying towards the base. Let me emphasize once more, drones were taking off one by one, sometimes in pairs or groups of 3, but in very small numbers. This suggests that the operation in this area likely involved just 2, 3, maybe 4 FPV drone operators. It was not a mass launch of 30 drones all at once. Here, drones were launched sequentially. One drone took off, was presumably given a target, and flew out. Then a second drone was launched, and so on. Again, it is likely that just one truck was involved, with 3 to 4 FPV drone operators per vehicle. According to some reports, 9 Russian aircraft were destroyed. However, the exact losses sustained by Russian aviation that day remain unclear. Some have even called it Russia's Pearl Harbor. It is evident that this marks yet another round, another phase of escalation. Tomorrow, without a doubt, no agreement will be reached by any party, and it seems highly likely that within a month, we'll see a third round of escalation. The next few weeks will likely be consumed by the fallout from today's events. Let's move on and return to the line of contact. We'll begin once again in the northeastern part of Ukraine and move closer to the front lines. Today, Ukrainian sources are publishing a large volume of footage from the Sumy and Kharkiv regions showing strikes against Ukrainian positions, mobile operators, and FPV drone groups. The first footage came from the area around the town of Krolovets. 2 Ukrainian vehicles were seen attempting to launch drones, either deep into Russian territory or toward the advancing Russian forces near Sumy. As a result of the strikes, Ukraine's mobile UAV control center was destroyed. Further south, near the town of Konotop, or more precisely, the village of Voronezh, new footage has surfaced. A small mobile UAV control unit belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces, operating out of a single vehicle, was attempting to assemble and launch drones toward Russia. However, during reconnaissance operations, the site was located and targeted with an Iskander missile. Now we move on to the front line itself. According to some cartographers and analysts, in the past 24 hours, the Russian army has once again expanded its zone of control and advanced several square kilometers toward the city of Sumy. This map shows the situation as of May 31, 2025, when reports came in about the clearing of the settlements of Alexeyevka and Vodolagi. Yesterday, this information was shared by the Russian North military grouping. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation confirmed control over Vodolagi, and today it also confirmed control over Alexeyevka. We also see updates regarding the settlement of Kondratyevka. Some analysts report that Russian forces now control about 30% of that settlement. The Russian army is currently focusing its efforts on advancing toward Yablunivka, from both Belovody and Lochnia. Many of the fields and forest lines around Yablunivka have come under Russian control, and Russian units are continuing to wedge themselves between Yablunivka and Yunakivka, aiming to encircle both settlements. Additionally, Russian forces are advancing from the areas of Oleshnya and Sudja, near the state border, to outflank Yunakivka from the east and southeast. This clearly shows that logistics and railway routes were disrupted during the Russian offensive in an attempt to create a security zone. We'll closely monitor how the situation develops from here. It's important to understand whether these operations inside Russian territory will be enough to derail the Russian offensive or whether they will have no impact. Next, we head to Kharkiv Oblast, where there is also a high volume of updates today. The Russian Ministry of Defense has released surveillance footage from the area around Chuhuiv. Over the past 3 to 5 days, there have been near-daily reports of Iskander strikes on Ukrainian positions in this area. Today, the ministry shared footage from one such reconnaissance operation, during which a well-equipped UAV launch and control center was located. The Iskander strike destroyed several vehicles, up to 4 launch systems, and as many as 30 drones. Now we move to the Kupiansk direction, where no significant changes are currently reported. However, key developments are emerging from the Siversk sector. Here, the Russian army has launched a determined offensive from the southeast, aiming to collapse the pocket along the line of Verkhnokamianske, Ivanodarivka, Vyemka, and Novoselivka. Russian forces are now targeting this pocket to straighten the front line and push towards Siversk from the southeast. Several videos have been published from this sector. One shows Russian soldiers raising the Russian flag in Ivanodarivka. Based on these visuals, we are not marking the map just yet, because both the Ministry of Defense and other footage suggest that Ivanodarivka has already been under Russian control for some time. However, it is possible that Ukrainian forces temporarily recaptured it, and that the settlement has now been definitively retaken by Russian troops. Slightly to the north, there is footage of assault operations. In one clip, a Russian soldier is seen running across a field, throwing an explosive device at Ukrainian positions along a tree line. After throwing it, he retreats to a safe distance, and the explosion destroys the Ukrainian strongpoint. Based on this footage, we update the map and mark these fields under Russian control. There is also surveillance footage from the area between Ivanodarivka and Verkhnokamianske, where Russian artillery is seen shelling Ukrainian positions along the tree line. It appears that Russian forces intend to secure the road between Verkhnokamianske and Ivanodarivka, which would increase their mobility for future operations westward toward Novoselivka. We expect Russian units to push all the way to the southeastern outskirts of Siversk. There is also significant activity reported in the pocket between Vyemka, Kuzminivka, and Zvanivka, the southern part of the Siversk axis. Here, Russian FPV drone operators, artillery crews, and aircraft are actively working the area. This is a gradual preparation of a staging ground ahead of what appears to be a forthcoming offensive. Judging by the current pace, a decisive Russian assault may begin here very soon. Next, we move to the Kostiantinivka sector of the front. Here, the main developments are unfolding along the line between Chasiv Yar and Kostiantinivka, but over the past 24 hours, there have been no updates or reports of further Russian advances. However, speaking specifically about territorial gains, the primary actions and maneuvers by the Russian Federation have been observed today in the southeastern pocket between Chasiv Yar and the Toretsk agglomeration, along the Siverskaya Donets-Donbass Canal. Since this morning, Russian sources have been publishing footage from surveillance drones. In this video, we can see a partially destroyed building being monitored from above by a Russian drone. Around the 20 to 30 second mark of the footage, we observe two Russian soldiers exiting the ruined building and raising two flags: the flag of the Russian Federation and the banner of the unit that participated in the battle for this settlement. Based on this surveillance footage, most military cartographers have marked the central and southern parts of northern Delivka as under Russian control. This is how the map looks today, as of the evening of June 1st. Just yesterday, all these areas, which are now shown in Russian colors, were considered either a grey zone or under Ukrainian armed forces control. Today, there is no doubt that the battle for Delivka is reaching its conclusion. By the end of June 1st, some pro-Russian analysts had already marked the entire northern part of Delivka as being under the control of the Russian armed forces. Not only northern Delivka, but also the surrounding fields and pockets along the railway stretching from southern to northern Delivka. According to these cartographers, all of these territories, as of the evening of June 1st, 2025, are fully under Russian control. If this information is confirmed and proves to be accurate, then Ukrainian units currently positioned along the Siverskaya Donets-Donbass Canal now face the threat of encirclement. Most likely, in the coming days, Ukrainian formations in this pocket will begin retreating northwest toward Bilahora. Otherwise, these units risk being surrounded. The Russian side is evidently trying to thwart any Ukrainian attempts to escape this encirclement by striking key roads and evacuation routes. In the footage, we can see artillery and drone strikes on bunkers and Ukrainian positions located along the evacuation path, from the canal area toward Bilahora and further northwest toward Oleksandr Shultin. It appears that this pocket will be eliminated in the near future. Now, regarding the Kliban bike sector and the H32 highway. Another day has passed without any significant changes. This is likely due to the fact that, as previously reported, Ukrainian forces redeployed reinforcements here from the Sumy front. These reinforcements seem to have stabilized the situation. Currently, there is no active movement on this axis. Russian forces appear to be entrenching themselves, possibly preparing for a Ukrainian counterattack aimed at reclaiming lost positions. Next, we move to the southern Donetsk direction. Here, the situation remains largely unchanged. Russian forces continue to shell the settlement of Komar using rocket artillery and conventional guns. Preparations are underway to establish a foothold in the area ahead of a future assault. In the final seconds of the footage, we likely see a scene from the artillery preparation phase. In the near future, the Russian army may attempt to enter Komar, likely from the east, from the direction of Otradne. The settlement of Alexeyevka is also regularly shelled by Russian forces. Over the past few days, Russian units managed to establish a presence on the eastern outskirts of this village. Currently, Russian troops are steadily advancing toward the central part of Alexeyevka. In the Hulyapol direction, according to some pro-Russian experts and neutral map analysts, Russian forces have expanded their zone of control west of Novopil and taken control of another tree line. In this area, the Russian offensive is slowly advancing toward the next village in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the village of Temirivka. As for the Zaporizhzhia front itself, no significant changes have been reported. Although yesterday, Syrskyi himself stated that Russian forces had launched a full-scale offensive on this axis as well. However, now that a full day has passed, there has been no surveillance footage or other evidence to confirm Syrskyi's claims. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and all the best to you.